Do you want an integrated amplifier that doesn't look like every other black box out there? The first time I was introduced to this company was in Axpona last year. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that they were something special. We're talking about the Advanced Paris XI75. It's an integrated amplifier. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about this unique integrated amplifier unlike anything else. So if you watch the channel at all, you know one of my favorite integrated amplifiers is an Advanced Paris. It's the Advanced Paris A10 Classic. And if I'm being honest, the biggest reason why this company intrigued me, interested me, is because of, well, the VU meters. They have power amps and they have integrated amplifiers that have giant VU meters on them. And they're gorgeous, they're beautiful, they're different. And even though they're fairly expensive at $2,500 for the integrated amplifier that I love, the A10 Classic, it's still a huge bargain when you look at other products in the same category, like Macintosh. And honestly, there's not another product out there that has the looks of the Advanced Paris. There are some that have VU meters, and of course there's some that have DACs, subwoofer outputs, etc. But the one thing that Advanced Paris just nails is how a product looks and, well, how it sounds too, and the amount of inputs and outputs that their products have. I just don't think anybody would ever be able to use all of the inputs on these devices. Maybe. Let's talk about specs. Most of the people are going to be worried about power, and that's why the XI75, well, the 75 means 75 watts into 8 ohm loads. It puts out 110 watts into 4 ohm loads. On the back, on the left, you have a phono stage. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different analog inputs. Above that, you have a USB-A input, a USB-B, which is kind of like the printer cable style input, a 5-volt DC out. Then you have 1 optical input, 2 coaxial inputs. Underneath that, you have a record out. So if you're into cassettes, making your own mixtapes, this has you covered. Most integrateds that we see today do not have a record out. And my interest in cassettes has been building, like a phoenix, gaining strength to rise from the ashes. I just have fun listening to cassettes. The problem is a lot of my old cassettes, well, they don't sound very good because they're 40 years old. But you can make your own from CDs or digital stuff. And then you have one of my favorite features of all. It's a preamp out into a main in, which means that you can put an equalizer in this thing. So you'd run the preamp out into the equalizer, output from the equalizer, back into the integrated amplifier. I love main in and pre-outs. I love the little bridge. That's how they used to do it, and that's how they should do it today. But very few companies do that today. Then you have 1 pair of speaker binding posts. Let's talk about how it works. All of the inputs, all of the controls are going to be operated from this remote control, ouch, or from a single button in the middle. That is a volume knob, but also if you depress it, you get into the menus. It has tone controls. It has a loudness control, which is also something that I wish more integrated amplifiers had. Also has balance, which ironically, many integrated amplifiers don't have today. There is a bit of a learning curve associated with operating this thing locally with the push button volume knob / menu knob and everything else. I'm used to it because I own the A10 Classic. Little bit easier using the remote control, but from the number of inputs and from the number of options for operation, this integrated is really unmatched. There's not a lot out there that does that. The TA2 has a lot of the same functionality, and ironically, it is very similar as far as getting into the menu systems. Very good. Let's talk about how, oh, I forgot to mention, on the back there's also a high bias switch. Let's talk about that and how it sounds. How it sounds. Oh, by the way, one of the things I love about stuff that has linear power supplies, big old toroidal transformer, is I love seeing the bolts on here. That bolt is to hold the transformer in place. I love it. It's just old school. This thing also has really good cooling. You can see all the way through it. So it's got cooling vents on the top and the bottom. Okay, how it sounds. Sounds very similar to the A10 Classic. You have a lot of detail, but it's dynamic. A lot of integrated amplifiers, a lot of amplifiers in general that I listen to that have a lot of detail always seem a little bit gutless on the bottom. I mean, if there's a really big bass hit, yes, there's some amplifiers that have a little bit of gumption on the bottom. But the Advanced Paris, to me, has that vintage vibe, that vintage Pioneer vibe, where you have a lot of on the bottom and a little bit of sparkle on top. I wouldn't ever call this a V-curve. Sounds awful similar to the Emotiva TA2. One of the differences between the TA2 and the Advanced Paris is you have that high bias option on the bottom, which means the first few watts are going to be Class A power. Switching between the two, I actually found in the high bias mode, the vocals are a little bit more laid back. They're not veiled at all, but just there's a little bit more warmth. In the non-high bias option, things are a little bit more exacting on top. And frequencies above about 4,000 are a little bit more pronounced. So if you do have a track that is recorded and it has some sibilance in it, running the non-high bias version, you're going to hear that a little bit more. I am not saying this amplifier is sibilant at all. What I am saying is there is a little bit of, I wouldn't say emphasis, there's a little bit more revealing characteristic of this amplifier in the 4K and up when you're not in high bias. When you're in high bias, tames it down. I feel like I'm talking about this like it's a negative thing. It's not at all. And it's really going to depend on your speaker. So if you have a warmer speaker, running this in non-high bias is going to give you a little bit more air and a little bit more excitement on top. Speaking of speakers, and if you're remotely interested in this speaker, you should probably pull the trigger today or this weekend. One of the things that I love to do on this channel is talk about a good deal. And this may be one of the best deals I've ever talked about on this channel. It is the Piega 3 Classic. This is a speaker from Switzerland. It's neutral. Just kidding. It's a little bit exciting on top. Get it? Neutral, Switzerland. Anyway, this speaker used to come in at $1,500. They are being blown out. Last call on this speaker, $500 a pair. Has a AMT tweeter on top. They are getting their own video tomorrow, but if you're into clarity, buy them. Gloss finish, they sound great. They're punchy on the bottom. This is my type of speaker. Beautiful. $500 is bananas. As of this video being released, they have 41 pair left. $500. $500. There's not much to complain when it comes to this integrated amplifier. It is priced perfectly, and it's going up against products like the Emotiva TA2. CXA81 from Cambridge, I believe. That's right around $1,000. Stuff from Yamaha, like the AS701, maybe the 801, puts out good power. If you're listening at really high levels though, like 85 dB and higher, and you have a song that has a lot of bass like Flowing Prose by the Beastie Boys off of the Hello Nasty album, it will start to break up in the high 80s. What I mean by breakup is that you're going to hear some distortion in the bass. But this is loud, and it's playing on a bookshelf speaker that is not terribly efficient. But if you like to listen at louder volumes, you have a speaker that can take it. You have a speaker that may be 4 ohms, maybe low sensitivity. This may not be enough power for you. However, since it does have preamp outputs, you can hook up an external amplifier if you want to later that has more power. Even though it doesn't have the VU meters, it still has a distinct aesthetic to it. The phono preamp is as good as anything that's going to be $200 or less. So you already have a very good, capable phono preamp inside. The DAC, probably only going to be bested by something like a Gishelli Labs J2 4493 or 4499, but you're going to be spending $250 to $500 to get that DAC. With loudness, with the tone controls, you got everything you really need. Hook up a Weem Ultra streamer to this, then you have streaming, you also have room correction. Some people may not like the menu system, getting in, changing the tone controls, changing the balance, but if you use the remote control, you're not really going to have to worry about that. Overall, I think Advanced Paris is awesome. I think it is a brand that is on the rise and really is going to start crushing it. Already crushing it. More people need to know about this brand. I'll have links in the description. You really need to check out those Piega speakers though, because they are not gonna last. Last call. I think this amplifier is gonna pair well with anything. Think about it as somewhat of a vintage receiver vibe. That's how it sounds. Sweet on top, punchy on the bottom, clean mid-range. You have the option with a Class A bias. What more could you want? Nothing. And it looks really cool. However, the looks could be a little bit divisive. Some people are going to love it, some people aren't going to love it. But in my rack, it is beautiful because it's different. Really cool plexiglass on the front. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.